Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today is a July 4th Tactical Tuesday, which means more fireworks than normal, John? Is that how it works?
It's hard to do more than normal for us. Our gauge is like days without incident, so yeah. I think there'll be just a normal amount of fireworks today, despite it being a
we're rolling back to zero, almost guaranteed. Getting back from Vegas 2023 WSOP ended the same way that Vegas 2022 existed, which was with me getting COVID. So next year, if anybody who's listening in the audience lives in Atlanta and you get COVID, I don't know, around May, just come like cough in my face and let's get this over with before I go to Vegas next year.
It's getting better though. Last time you got it right when you got here. This time, you got it as you were leaving, basically. So
yeah,
maybe next year is the year. The third time's the charm. You might be able to fade it completely.
Yeah, I had about, I think, nine or 10 good days. I was in Vegas long enough to play approximately 5 poker sessions and go 0 for 5 in my sessions. So, just it hit right in time to save me from
COVID actually a gift.
COVID made me money. God, poker. But all in all, fun time in Vegas. Got to see a bunch of people. Played a tag team tournament with Wolf because you were, I don't know what you were doing. You're too afraid to play. Just MTT John is like a once in a millennium type event that we were not allowed to see this trip. So I'm not recovered, frankly. Yesterday I couldn't even get out of bed basically. But today I'm feeling better. I think in the next couple of days I'll be back to jiu-jitsu and back to life as I remember it. But if you go to Vegas and you play in the WSOP, try not to get COVID. It's rough. It's rough.
Oh, well,
anyway,
glad you're feeling better and you feel like you're up to helping me out with some of these hands, because that's what I need.
Well, let's not go too crazy. I'm here. We'll see. We'll see if I'm up to helping you or not. Depends on the level of help that is needed. What's the theme for today's episode?
Pocket nines. Pocket nines. We got three hands. Yeah, 3 pocket nines. Hander series to go over today. We're going to start out with this one. It's just a 3-bet pot out of position. The theme of this first hand, or not the theme, the kind of the strategy in this first hand is going to be very similar. Actually, it's the exact same strategy as a recent Tactical Tuesday episode where we talked about the bet check bet value betting line, or the bet check raise value betting line, and as the pre-flop raise and 3-bet pots out of position. So have that spot for you here today. Have a reg, and the button opens to $25. We're playing 5-10. I 3-bet to 110 with my pocket nines. The reg on the button calls. We're about 100 big blinds effective on the flop. Really good flop. 8-7-6 rainbow. Flop the overpair and the open ender. First thing to talk about here is just c betting versus not c betting.
Yeah, I mean, you could go either way. Again, I don't really have a preference. I think if you are going to bet, you bet like half pot. I think that's the size. You probably don't want to bet a third. You're betting this board at a lower frequency than range. So when you do bet, you're using a bigger size. I think that half pot's fine. I think checking is totally fine too. A lot of good things can happen off of a check. So that's my opinion. You can do what you want to do. You got a good hand.
I'll go with option A, half pot.
Yeah.
Get called.
Calls. Yeah. So I guess some thoughts here. I get when you do bet half, right? Like, I think when you do bet half, that's pretty indicative that villain is going to have some sort of equity. Like, it's unlikely that villain just has like overcards with back doors. They're going to have, you know, at least something like ace 10 suited type hand with back doors, most likely, or without back doors, just ace 10 and full, maybe jack 10 suited, something like that. It's probably the bottom of it. And then, you know, obviously like the 8-9s and those type of hands are going to call too. It's, as well as like, I don't know if they have a raising range on this board. I assume they do. Just kind of hard to help yourself when you flop a set to raise or two pair or something like that. So I have to imagine at least some frequency villains are going to have a raising range. So again, there is a little bit of removal here when they just call the flop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with all of that. I think, yeah, I mean, I think your analysis of their range is exactly what I think it is. I think the bottom is just some sort of gut shot, like ace high plus gut shot, maybe like pair plus gut shot, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, all that being said, like I feel like that leads really nicely into the thing that I wanted to talk about, which was, should we bet the turn versus that range? And that was like my big question here is, you know, kind of my standard strategy for the spot. If you for the listeners who watched the episode from I think 4 or 5 weeks ago, is just to check here, jam facing a bet from the button, or just jam clean rivers with my overpair myself if the turn gets checked through. Any thought to like deviating from that plan because of board texture and our exact hand or anything like that here, or would you just?
I don't think so. I mean,
just treat it the same.
Yeah, I like, you could bet. I think betting is like not the end of the world. My preference is check. I think that there's a lot of information revealed when you check the turn. I think that like based on whether or not villain chooses to bet, based on the size that villain uses, like it's just going to be quite indicative of the strength of their hand, and you can kind of play accordingly. Like if the turn checks through, then you're probably feeling pretty good about your spot. Actually, you still lose the tens and probably jacks that doesn't 4-bet at full frequency too. So yeah. Anyway, I think that checking is fine, probably my preference, but I think betting is not the end of the world either.
One of the downsides that I sort of foresaw with checking here is that like I'm not going to be able to get that river jam as frequently as I would with Correct. You know the hands previously where I have like, you know, kings as an overpair. Like I'm not going to jam like a jack or higher on the river, or a, you know, or even a 9 maybe. I don't know what I do if I river a 9.
Well, I have an interesting question, right? Like, is this a hand that wants to play for stacks?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good
on this board, right? Like, are we like really sad about not playing for stacks with 9s on this board? I don't know. I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world to go check on the turn, have the river be a king, and then check, and that's just
a king. You're just gonna bet. Like I have to imagine you're gonna value bet most river cards actually. Like that.
I guess what I meant was like I'm not gonna jam a king, but
right. Like, but essentially like they have better natural value in their range, just in like jacks and tens with overpairs, right? Like your hand's not as strong as aces, where it dominates all their overpairs. So like aces beats 9s. So I mean, I don't think necessarily you have a hand that like wants to play for stacks. So like with that in mind, I don't think the downside is like ultra significant.
It's okay. I think that like again ties really nicely into the next thing that happens. So I check and we face a bet. Button bets a third. Is this a spot where you wouldn't check jam because 9s is not super excited to play for stacks, as you said, or is this just you just continue with the plan here?
I don't think I jam. I think I mean, we talked about their range on the flop, and like it just jamming just feels too thin. Like I think that like you can just call and like play rivers kind of accordingly. That'd be my personal preference.
Yeah. Okay. So that was going to be like my next question / concern was, is jamming here just too thin? It does feel really thin. There's that portion of their range that you mentioned, like the 10s and jacks, that like I wouldn't be shocked if I jammed here and 10s and jacks just like tanked and like didn't feel great about calling and like maybe even folded. I don't know if 10s folds because it it has like the extra gut shutouts. But like that's like if that's like what we're scared of happening, right? Like,
but jacks beats nines and tens, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but yes, like I like ace eight ain't calling. I mean, unless it's specifically ace eight of diamonds, I think. So like it's hard to get called by like worse hands. Plus, like you do have like a lot of equity yourself, right? Like you have an overpair with an open ender, so you can realize equity, like, and then play rivers quite well. Like I just think lots of good things can happen from a call, and you don't dominate value. So it's tough.
We don't dominate value that calls off.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for like 8-9. I guess that's like the one prayer. Yeah, 8-9 and ace eight of diamonds.
Yeah, and I think like there are other spots where like you do jam the turn and you kind of like shrug because you don't always dominate value.
Yeah.
SPR is actually like pretty high here still.
Right.
You're still jamming like 92 big blinds. For the podcast listener, by the way, the flop was 6-7-8 rainbow. I don't even know if I said the board. 6-7-8 rainbow. The turn was a tray. So John has nines. He 3-bet pre. He bet half pot on the flop. Now there's 446 in the pot. Villain bet 145 on the turn. John's got 922 left. So yeah, he's got a 92 bigs. So anyway, yeah, I
call here, check decide the river, most likely.
I think so. Yeah, I think that would be my preference. Just check call, check decide.
That's what I
think you can jam with like aces and kings, and that's just totally reasonable.
Right. Yeah, probably just went a little too thin here, and kind of just stuck with my plan. Got to fold. Obviously, doesn't mean much when they fold.
Nice, you got him to fold fours. Well done. You got him.
Just pray the river wasn't going to be a 5.
Yeah, that's true. They had 5% equity, so well done. You did it. You jammed for protection. You got it done, John. You got it through. Whew.
In my defense, it wasn't for protection. This is just how I play this is how I play the spot. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think it still matters, like, ranging opponent.
Oh no! The reason I brought this hand in is because it did feel like everything about this hand did feel thin, or like kind of questionable. Like, is this a spot? Like, where like this is my normal go-to strat, but is this a situation because of the board texture and the range that I should be thinking about deviating from the check jam kind of protocol on the turn and going for check call instead.
By the way, for whatever it's worth, I think too that I am probably calling all in on most rivers. For what it's worth, like after you check call the turn, I'm setting up to where like I'm probably just calling all in on a lot of different runouts, given that we bet half, villain didn't raise a flop, we blocked 9-10. I think 2-pair and sets just raise too often. But yeah, with that said,
2-pair and sets might also just bet bigger on the turn. I think that's a big data point.
Yeah, so we have like a lot of removal effects. So anyway, just wanted to like throw that out there that if I did check call the turn, then I'm looking to check call most rivers in this specific scenario.
Yeah. Wish I went with that plan, but it's all right.
You got the fold. Good job. All right. Second hand before break, we're gonna do 2 and the old 2-1 ball. Looks like John's playing 500 no limit. He opens to 2.5 bigs, and the big blind calls. He's got 9 of hearts, 9 of clubs, big blind. Doesn't have a full stack, but looks like there's some zoominess going on, so don't know whether or not villain is a reg or a fish. Villain in the big blind checks. John checks behind. Flop is 10-5-6 with the 10-6 of clubs. Generally, this is going to be a big bet or check board. Nines with a club falls into the check category. I think you could also bet small if you really wanted to, but that's neither here nor there.
Like having a mid pocket pair that, still, if we bet small, we can still definitely get called by 5x and 6x. But check this one back.
Yeah, you turn a set, so that's a pretty good turn. The big blind checks again. You bet 70%. and the big blind calls. I guess the first thing here would be like the turn sizing. I would, yeah, I'd probably just overbet. I think that's the size preference that I would have here on the 9. Like if we have like just a lot of conceivable straight draws that we turn, very minimal value that we turn on the 9. Probably expected to bet 7-8 at almost an absolute frequency. Probably even going to bet 9-10 at most frequencies. So we're like repping exactly 9s when we bet and can get called by like most any pair. So yeah, I would personally just overbet the turn. But yeah, anyway, you don't. Dylan calls.
I think that's a reasonable option. Yep.
There's 66 in the pot. River's a tray of hearts, so pretty innocuous card. Final board is 10, 6, 5, 9, 3. There's 66 in the pot. Villain has 402 behind, and they donk a quarter. So they bet 25 into 66.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not a quarter pot. They donk $25 into
Oh yeah, it's a quarter of $100. Sorry, need to clarify that. It's a $25 chip. They donk. So yeah, I mean, pretty clearly you have to raise.
Yeah. Just like planning on raise calling it off here. One of the things that I think about in this spot is that like I'm raising in a spot where I never have the nuts.
Yeah.
And does that, I don't think I can't not raise here, but like it is like the first thing that entered my mind was like, okay, if this guy donk jam.
That's true. I mean, it's true, but like there's just a number of things like that would make me kind of undervalue that aspect of the hand that you don't have 7-8, so you don't have 7-4, don't have deuce 4, so yeah, you don't have any of the straights that are available. However, I guess villain started short stacked, so we're not even sure that like that's something that the villain is able to leverage here. I think it's a difficult thing to leverage, and I can probably count on like two hands the number of times that humans have actually leveraged such a thing, like in a weaponized it like Dr. Evil against me. Yeah. So it's a rare thing that somebody bet 3 bets the river. So like, yeah, I'm also, it's kind of weird. I like, they don't have the nuts in full either, because they didn't bet the turn or check raise the turn, which is like another big part of this, that like they don't really have 7-8 here either. Yeah. I am a little concerned about your plan to bet call it off, or to raise call it off.
That wasn't my plan. That's just what I was suggesting, was like,
yeah,
after you do raise, like one of the things I was worried about is like, man, if they just know that I never have the nuts here, and if they just decide to try to take advantage of that, should I just be thinking about bet calling it off with, or raise calling it off with 9s?
If we've kind of talked about these spots historically, and like my general thought is like, if you got that in you tip your hat to the man and give them the pot, right? If they have like bet jams here with like 7s, like think about, so they're like check call the turn and then donk 25 into 66 with 7s in the hopes that you raise so that you bet, so they can bet jam. I mean, like even the hands that have like decent blocker properties, like this doesn't make any sense for those hands to even like take the line. So like I think the chances of that happening are like super, super low. Maybe like 5 tray turns into 2 pair, or they river trays. That would be the side of it. Like if we're gonna bet, get raised, and then, or if we're gonna raise the bet and then get jammed on, like, do we dominate value? That's probably the bigger question, but probably not, to be honest with you. Sizing here, I could go whatever, like probably just big 134. Yeah, you go 110. A little bit smaller than I would have gone. And you get clicked, which means you're getting 4.37 to 1 on your money. You got 15 seconds. What are you going to do?
Just pray he has pocket threes.
Yeah. Sucker for a Groupon like me.
I know. You're just
Sucker for a Groupon.
Here, just take my $80.
Yeah. And they have the 7-4. Yeah, you just give them the $80
like,
versus
at least he didn't jam. That's
yeah. Well, this hand I could get more on board with, other than probably would have gone bigger on the turn and bigger on the river, and would have lost more money. So, good job. Way to play pot control. Make the pot super small with your set so you don't get stacked. That's good. All right. So, crushing it today. You're folding out the fours. You're playing pod control with your sets. Man, I can't wait to see what happens after the break. Stick around.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back. I thought I might struggle through today's episode, but man, John keeps bringing hands like this. I could go all till next week. We're on fire, baby.
You want to see something? You want to see something really tragic? Just play through this hand. This is the most tragic hand I've played in who knows how long. Definitely this year. So
no, wait to hold that teaser until right directly following the break after the ads to set everything up. You know,
it's for the loyal listeners who stick through.
Stick through the break. All right, let's see. This is the most tragic one of them all.
Oh, this is the most tragic hand I've played in a year.
A year. Wow. Somebody needs to go in the archives and dredge up some of the hands John's played in the last year, because this is some tough company. All right. Sticking with the theme of 2 9s. John's playing 5-handed, 1 KNL or 5-10 no limit online. Looks like the hijack opens to 2.5 bigs, and the blinds fold. John calls on the button. He has the 9 of hearts and the 9 of spades. The flop is Jack 7-4 monotone. How on earth this could be the most tragic hand you've played all year? I don't even know how this could.
Yeah, right. It's like hard to see it right now, but
it's like impossible to see it, right? Like
it's impossible to see it. Yeah.
Dylan checks. You just check behind. So
that's a good start.
Oh, okay. Now we have so flop is Jack 7-4 all hearts. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. John turns to set.
Potential has improved.
Yes, tragedy potential has improved, and villain overbets the turn. So villain takes the delayed c-bet line. That's 93 into 65. Now that is a line. Just calling.
Okay. So far, so good. 2 streets approved.
So you river a boat. Villain checks. So the flop was Jack 7-4. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. River is the 4 of clubs.
I have no idea what's going on anymore in this hand. I mean, the overbet on the turn, we're starting to get into like weird territory, but then overbet check was officially perplexed.
I think I just jammed the river. There's 251 in. Villain's got 897. Just the thought of my COVID brain even trying to construct like a bet 3-bet range just I can't even imagine making it to that node of like betting and then getting raised and then having the option of placing the third bet on the river. I mean, Villain polarized the turn. I find it hard to imagine that Villain's flushes are going to fold to a jam.
They have flushes? Like, what am I targeting?
I don't know. Flushes. I think you're targeting flushes that check the flop, that don't see bet the flop, like,
and then check the river.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird hand, but I mean, what's the alternative, right? Like, I mean, you either overbet or jam, and I like jam better than overbet.
I'm such an idiot. Yeah.
What could you possibly do besides those options?
Yeah, I did overbet, but that's why this hand is so tragic that I didn't pick the jam size on the river. Look what happens. I overbet.
Okay. Why would you even do this? So there's 251 in the pot. John bets 496. And Villain calls.
What a dumb size on the river. Should have just ripped it.
With a king high flush. Why? just why? What do you do if they jam? Tank and hope to God. Like,
look at my hand on the flop and his hand on the flop. And then like, wow, I found a way to win or found a way to somehow make the best hand when I'm drawing dead on the flop and then didn't win all the money. Because I picked this silly size on the river.
Yeah, the river paired the board. It was a 4 of clubs for the podcast listener, by the way. John made a boat, which is essentially the nuts. Yeah, I mean, at least you saved $386.
Most tragic hand I've played in a year.
Well, it's only halfway gone. You got 6 more months. You can do worse than this, I think, if you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
But that said, 4th of July, fireworks, have fun, be safe. Don't anybody blow their hands off. That's not good. It's hard to click buttons when you blow your hands off. Yeah, thank you for listening. And if you're out in the live streets or considering being in the live streets, check out Live Cash PREFLOP Bootcamp. Probably the best course that I've ever made. And I made NUFFLE. So that's saying something.
It is saying something.
And that's all I got for today's episode of Tactical Tuesday. Unless you have any parting words, John.
Oh, see you next week.
See you next week. Tragedies may or may not continue. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.